Hello and welcome to our workshop for the third sector on evidence and impact using the census data. My name's Patty Doran. I work for the UK Data Service at the University of Manchester, and with me is Dave Rawnsley, who also works for the UK Data Service, but he's based at GIST. So just to go over what we're covering today, I'm going to give a quick introduction about the workshop and what we're trying to achieve with delivering these workshops to the third sector. Then Dave's going to give a presentation about aggregate data. That will be followed by a short quiz just to check your understanding of the information that Dave's been covering. And then Dave's going to give a demonstration of using some of the tools that we have at the UK Data Service. So we're going to have a look at InFuse and GeoConvert. And if we've got time, we'll also do a little demonstration of DCAN, or we might leave that for the end around the questions and discussion. And then we've got an activity for you. Again, that's the handout, and you'll have 10 or 15 minutes to complete that activity. And then we'll come back together and have some feedback and see how you got on, answer some questions, and then hopefully evolve more into a discussion generally about using data to present impact for your services. So just as an introduction, the UK Data Service is a comprehensive resource that's funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. So it's a single point of access for a wide range of secondary social science data. So that includes census data, but also social survey data. But what we also have, which is generally people are less aware of, is a whole range of support, training and guidance tools. And that's what we're here to do today, is to help with some of the support and training side of things. So the objectives of this workshop is to help for us to promote our services specifically to the third sector users, increase understanding of how data can be used within a variety of settings, and we want to support people to access that data, and that might be through our tools or that might be through other ways which we'll discuss today. And the whole aim of that is to enable people to produce the evidence by enhancing their data knowledge and skills. So the rationale for this workshop was that we're aware that there's lots of third sector organisations out there who provide services that kind of fit within the social science sort of field, really. So it's lots of people work to improve outcomes for marginalised groups, reduce inequalities, and out there providing services to those most in need. And lots of these services run on short-term funding, and the funding relies on demonstrating the need and proving that the work that you're doing is creating impact and that the interventions that you deliver are worth funding. And so how the UK Data Service can help is through all the evidence that can be produced from the data that we store. So the social survey and census data that we have can help provide context to the work that you're doing and demonstrate where the services are most needed. And so this is the first workshop of a series of 3. So today we're using census data, but we're going to explore other forms of data over the next coming weeks as well. And we know that third sector organisations can mean a whole lot of different things. We could be talking about really big charities, we could be talking about very small local groups, we could be talking about small groups that have a national remit. So we know that there's quite a lot of variation out there, and that not all third sector organisations will have a dedicated research team, and often it may fall on the people delivering the services to also produce the reports and demonstrate the impact and need. So we know it's quite complex and there's quite a lot of demands on people's time. So we're trying to enable you with more awareness of the tools and how we can support you. So just to go back to the sort of data that we have, at the UK Data Service we kind of have 3 sorts of data. Aggregate data, which is what we're looking at today, so using the census data really to show how aggregate data can be used. And then we also have a lot of micro data, so that's data about individuals, and lots of that comes from the UK surveys. There is also a subset of census data, which is micro data, and we also have other sorts of data. So we do some international data sets, business data, and we also have qualitative data in our repositories. So there's a lot of data out there that can support your services, and hopefully through the workshop today and the ones in the next weeks, you'll be able to sort of have a greater understanding of how our data can support you. So I'm going to pass over to Dave now, who's just going to give an introduction to aggregate data.
Okay, hi everyone. I am David Rosley. I work for GIST. We used to be part of the University of Manchester, but because of the vagaries of modern life, we are now ourselves part of the third sector. We are a not-for-profit organisation supporting UK academia, FE, HE, research and schools, and increasingly the third sector itself. I've been involved with the Census since about 1995. Started at the university as a placement student and stayed. So what do we mean about aggregate data? Well, it can be data about populations, groups, regions, countries. It can be time series, so it can be a series of data, or it can be a single point in time. Sorts of things that we're looking at: population, census head counts, the economy, so looking at trade, possibly bilateral flow of trade between countries. Could be greenhouse gas emissions. We have a lot of data on CO2 emissions. Or it could be groups of people, employment rate for a country, for instance. Here's some aggregate data. These are data from PISA, which is the international educational data set. So along the bottom we have different countries, and then we have a reading score. Then when we have a score, dots for girls and diamonds for boys. Girls, as you can see here, outdoing boys in every single country. So when we talk about aggregate data, we're usually looking at data with a geographic unit. So it could be a whole country, it could be a census ward, it could be a postcode. Aggregate data about people could be households, could be bedrooms, or it could have been averaged, totaled, or otherwise derived from individual level data, which we find in survey or census returns. And it's important to understand that each data has a universe or a population. So that might be a daytime population, or it could be a workplace population. And that data is aggregated into a table, usually. There'll be a geographic element. I've got a better image than that. I've got some actual data I got out of from the census this morning. So it will usually have a geographic element. These are local authorities in Northern Ireland, and they also have a unique identifier. That's because it's possible some places could have the same name. So we don't have anything unique there, but it's quite common that there are more than one ward called central. So we add a unique identifier to that. Each variable will have a description. Here we have age 3 and over, and the main language used being English, and that will also have a unique identifier as well. And that's so that you can cite this data. We've built a system at the census unit at UK Data Service which largely removes the tables from the search aspect of it. You don't need to know what data is in what table, but we do still present the data in tabular form. So what can census data tell us? It's the most complete source of information. It's getting close to about 100% coverage. It's never quite there. It's for a single point in time, which was, the last one was the 27th of March 2011. After that day, even the day after, that data can to some extent be outdated. However, for that day, it's almost 100%. The next one will be March 2021. There's no exact date yet, although it will be in March. And it covers a wide range of demographic, socioeconomic characteristics. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other census products that come out of the census as well. So we have geographic boundary data for creating maps, microdata, so samples of individual level data, flow data, so we look at how people are moving around within the country and also externally, and how they're getting to work as well, and derived data, so we have deprivation data and spatio-temporal data such as POP 24/7, which looks at populations at different times of the day. So how are they produced? Everyone gets a form, either a physical form or an online form. A lot of work goes into the forms beforehand. It's ongoing now, asking what questions do we want on that form, and local government, central government, businesses, academic organisations such as ourselves all have a say in what questions we want putting on there and what we want as an output from those questions. 2011, there was a new question added on civil partnerships, for instance. Local authorities might want questions on household composition, accommodation types, so they can plan for services. Central government might want to know about ethnicity, employment, disability, so they can also put funds into the right departments. Business might want to understand about population movement, travel to work areas, and from those questions, a series of tabular outputs are designed at different levels of disclosure, and that's quite important, the disclosure element. I will mention that later. There's higher levels of information available for larger areas and lower levels for smaller areas. Once the tables have been created, that's when they create the geographies, or certainly the output area building blocks for the geography. The output areas are altered if there is a significant change to population, social homogeneity, and physical boundaries. And I'll cover that a little bit more later. And then the higher level geographies are rebuilt with the changed output areas. Once that's done, they add disclosure control. So statistical disclosure control is where they blur the data, they restrict certain data, or they remove it if it's felt that it could in any way reveal the identity of an individual. And so far, that's never happened, and the different census organisations are extremely heavy on security and statistical disclosure control, because they want people to have 100% faith that nothing bad is going to come out from filling in a form. There's also anonymity, the 100-year rule. No one is allowed to be disclosed for 100 years rule, for 100 years, and then the individual level data is released. and as I say, this has never been breached. So a little word about census geography. It's not as bad as it used to be, I'm glad to say, but it's still tricky. So the building block is the output area. That's the smallest area. It's designed to have a similar population size throughout the nations. It's supposed to be socially homogeneous, so the people within it are supposed to be, to some extent, similar. And it's constrained by obvious boundaries such as roads and rivers. And then in 2011, output areas were changed so that they aligned with local authority boundaries, which you would have thought would have happened before that, but it, for some reason, didn't. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's a minimum of 40 households and 100 residents in each output area, although they attempt to get 125 households. That's the recommended size. In Scotland, don't know why, maybe because it's a lower population density, there's a minimum of 20 households and 50 people, with a target of average of about 50 households. And output areas, they attempt to keep them stable over time. But obviously with changing populations, changing boundaries, it's not always possible. From the super output areas, from the output areas, super output areas are built. And there are two types, lower layer and middle layer. In Scotland, they call them data zones and intermediate geographies, and in Northern Ireland, they just have lower super output areas. And this probably means nothing to you because they're not real. That we don't refer to them, we don't pay our council tax to them, we don't live in a lower layer super output area. No one ever talks about them. They tend not to have names, just numbers, but it's a way of trying to create a geography that rarely changes over time, and so we can then use those to compare with previous and future censuses. On top of those, we do have real geographies, so we have regions, counties, local authorities, wards, those will be council or electoral wards, and electoral divisions in Wales. We don't have postcodes in the census. However, we have an application called GeoConvert, which you can use to look up geographies and also convert from one geography to another within certain caveats. Because obviously converting postcodes up to council district areas can be tricky. I think this is my final slide. So we've seen that aggregate data that's been derived from individual level data, which are pulled together, so large patterns and trends can be seen. And aggregate data are often about different groups of people or regions collected for administrative purposes by census officers, central banks, national statistical officers, local and central government departments, and they use them to identify how and where they should be using the public funds. Here we've got just a little slide to show you how the budget was spent in 2015, and it's census data that informs these decisions. And aggregate data is also used to check how different groups in the community are affected by these policies and by these changes in funding, and hopefully to inform future policy changes. I think it's back to Patty now.
So I think we'll move on now to Dave's demonstration of how to access some of our census aggregate data. He's going to start with InFuse and move on from there. So Dave will do this for about the next sort of 20 minutes, and then we'll move on to an activity where you'll give it a try yourself. So yeah, thank you.
So InFuse is a web interface we built for the 2001 census data, and then updated it for 2011. So I'm just going to go through it and get some data out. We were thinking about what could we use, sort of a relevant sort of statistic we could find for something in the news, and we thought about households with single occupancy and households with old age people, obviously with sheltering in place. This is it will be quite useful to see what sort of populations we have of people who are over 65 and on their own. So this is our front page to InFuse. Choose 2011 data. Got two loops into the data. Depending on which one, it will restrict the amount of. So if you choose geography, it will restrict the detail of topics. If you choose topics, it will restrict the geography that you can get. So we're going to choose geography first, and we're going to look at Manchester, as we're based in Manchester. I understand the ward names. Okay, so here we have all the geographies from the different nations in the UK. We do have some UK level data. All the nations have their own census questionnaires and questions, and they are all wanting slightly different things out of the census. And as gone by, they have moved further and further away from this idea of a UK census. But there are still certain areas that are the same. So we're going to choose local authorities, expand that, and we'll get a list of all the local authorities in England. It's rather a large list, unfortunately, so it just takes a little bit of time. Okay, so here we have all the local authorities, and we choose Manchester, and we're just going to open that up, and we're going to select all the wards. But all we have to do is just click that one. The 32 wards within Manchester itself, and we'll add that. We'll get confirmation that that's been added. So Manchester, all wards and electoral divisions. I hope you can see this. And then I will click on next. That'll take us to the topics. So we start with our filters. It'll narrow down these the topic selections that we have. We're going to choose household composition. It's just a very, very simple query we're going to do here.
And just to say, Dave, sorry to interrupt, but if that is a bit small for you, there is a zoom icon at the top of your screen that you should be able to use to zoom in, just to make that a bit clearer. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. That's okay. We're just going to choose the first. We just want household composition on its own. We could choose it mixed with other topics as well. We'll just choose this one. And then we get some information about what we've chosen. So it tells us exactly what it means by household composition. Oh, this is Northern Ireland only. I better go back this way. Have I chosen the right one? Household composition. No, yeah, it should be. Household composition and age. Is it? Number of bedrooms. That's not exactly what I'm after. I'm going to go with that. It says it's Northern Ireland, so I'm not feeling very confident about this. The data we want is, we'll check people who are aged 0 to 64 and then people aged 65 and over, and that's what we want. We've added that now. Confirmation in here. This is just confirmation of what we've selected areas and the combinations we've selected, and we'll get the data. Once that's been, the query's been run, the download data button will appear. We'll download that, and I'm hoping that this is okay. And I'm going to open this. It comes down as a zip file, and in there we get some metadata about what we've selected. I'll make that larger. So we'll zoom to that. So it tells us that these are the unique identifiers for the variables. So these are the field names. These are the identifiers for the cells. The topic, the category, and the description. We also have how you can cite the data if you're going to use this in any publications. And the data itself. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I have the wards of Manchester. This tells you what level the wards are at and the geography type. And here are our 2 counts. So this is persons in one-person households that are 0 to 64 years of age, and these are people in single-person households who are, so these are 65 and these here are 0 to 64. And we can just do a quick calculation on these to get some sort of percentages. So we're going to just do a quick percentage. Divide it by, I didn't take the whole population, so I'll divide it by that plus that. I'll times that by 100. Hopefully that should give us something useful. It doesn't look useful at all. Let me just check on that. That's better. And I can just create that very quickly. And that gives us the percentage of people who are over 65 living on their own in this ward. And if I can sort this smallest to largest. So, as you might expect, city centre, lots of young people living there. It's only 5%. Hume as well. There's an area of a lot of students and young people living. And down here, Moston, Burnage, High Blakely, you're approaching 40% of the people living there are over 65 and living on their own. I will just very quickly show you GeoConvert, as I mentioned it earlier. GeoConvert is a tool to match postcodes and other geographies and convert data between them. Very quickly, I can give you some information about some postcodes, for instance. I'll choose. We only have the latest postcode lookup, unfortunately. What we can do here, we can add data about postcodes. So we can add some deprivation scores. So if I add some English, these are the index of multiple deprivation, which is derived from census data and other administrative data. We can add some classifications as well. These are sort of little pen pictures of areas. Actually, I'll choose the subgroups because these are more detailed. We can add metadata about how urban or rural they are, postcode populations, so these are derived from the number of address points that the Royal Mail delivers to. And we can also add some geographic data and also data about the postcode, so we can say when the postcode was introduced or terminated. Some postcodes go out of service. I could supply a list of postcodes if I want, a huge long list, so I could just supply my own. We get some metadata about the postcode and about the match, and also we can get some of the results, which I'll quickly show you here. So postcode in South Manchester. We didn't put the description in of the. Oh, sorry. This is the description. My area is defined. A little pen picture of inner city ethnic mix, and here the deprivation score and the deprivation rank. And we have more information about what those mean on the website. I will quickly show you DCAN as well. If you are after large quantities of census data, so if you do want whole tables, we've loaded bulk data into something called DCAN. That's just the name of the software it uses. So here we can look at the topics. So if you want to look at language, this is all the tables that use language, so we can have a look at page by language profile in Wales, and we can just grab all the data for instance, all local authorities, all act areas. It's obviously, and it only covers Wales, obviously. We can preview the data. Doesn't tell us much. Oh, here we go. We can make those larger. If that's what you want, you can download that, and that will give you all that data for all apt areas in Wales. That will take some. Oh, no, it's downloaded actually. Quickly show you. There you go. All the data you would ever need about all that Welsh language. Okay, I think that covers everything I wanted to say.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Dave. That's
okay.
It's really good to see the tools.
Quickly, obviously, we're on the end of a phone. We're on the end of email, social media. If you've got any questions, yeah. Right
now, we're going to have a break. Though it's not a break. Hopefully, you'll all come back and talk to us at the end of it. But we've got a handout, and it's some step-by-step instructions to download some data like Dave did from DCAN, from InFuse. So we'd like you to go away just for 10 minutes, have a look at those instructions and follow the instructions and download the data. And there's an optional part at the end to open up the data set in Excel or something similar and try and pull out the statistics that we're looking for. And we're really trying to highlight with this activity how useful the data can be to give context to a situation. So there's a hypothetical question there that you're in Birmingham and you want to know how many older people are living by themselves because you're concerned about the impact of social isolation with COVID-19. So we want to know how many people locally in Birmingham that might be affecting. Yep, so we've got most people saying 1,409, which is right, it's this number here. So that's the number of people in one person households who are over 65. So that's great. The number beside it, the 3,712, that's the number of one person households, and 10,728 was the number of total households. So I think there's 2 more questions. So what percentage of households in Bartley Green is this? So this would have required you to do a bit of calculation. So we'll see how many of you got that far. This wasn't, we do other training around sort of introduction to Excel and introduction to statistics and stuff, so I realised that this might not be the sort of thing that everyone does all the time. But we've got quite a few people answering this, so that's great. And yeah, we've got most people there saying the 13.1%, which is right. You'll see that, you might see that on my screen if you hadn't done the calculation yourself. So that's down there, the 13.1%. And actually I just realised you've got the last answer as well on the screen probably as well, if you're looking carefully. I think there's one more. You don't need to write too carefully, there's a big arrow pointing to it, but we'll put the last question up anyway. what percentage of people aged 65 and over are living alone across all wards in Birmingham. That was, the original question that we were trying to achieve. And as I say, I'll put it up on the screen there so you can see. But a lot of you are getting that anyway. Hopefully some of you found that for yourself. And yeah, the answer is 11.6%. So I just thought I'd highlight a few things on the screen that I had done. So so this is just a copy of the Excel data that I downloaded. And so first I just wanted to point out that I cleaned up this data slightly. So I changed some of the labels up here at the top of the columns so that they made a bit more sense, or they were more concise and I could read them in the columns. So this was the total households, this was the one-person households, and this was the one-person households who were 65 or over. So I did that first. And then I went down the bottom and I did my totals. So I just summed up all those columns so I knew what the total across all of Birmingham was. And then I calculated the percentage by taking the one-person household from the total households and copied the percentages down the side. And then I ordered the wards from lowest percentage to highest percentage, just so I could see the trend and see what was happening and see what the smallest percentage was compared to the highest percentage, and then looking at the mean as well. So those were just the basic steps that I took to clean up that, that data. Now I think we're going to move on to a bit more of a discussion. We do have a few questions.
There is a question there that says, why are there only data sets for 35 counties available? We've only got 35 counties in the England section because some of the old counties were split up and made into unitary authorities, and so they will be available in the local authority section. We simplified, rather than having borough councils, district councils, unitary authorities, we just call them all local authorities.
There were a couple earlier from people asking about international data. Dave, did you see those?
Oh yes, we have third sector data relating to emerging economies. We do have a lot of data. We have data from the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, and International Energy Agency, if that's what you're after as well.
That's great. Can you go through how you would find the ward? Not sure. Is this the first question here, Francis? How can we find where an area is if we don't know it's in Birmingham? So if you've got an individual ward and you want to locate where it is that, I think that's what the question is there.
We don't have that, but that's something we might be looking at. It's what we call a gazetteer, because some places are not, I think, if you try and look for Huddersfield doesn't exist if I remember rightly, it's Kirklees. So yeah, we are planning on having a gazetteer in the future.
There was another question as well asking if this census data was the same as the census data that's held by the ONS. Do you want to answer that, Dave?
Yes, we work with the ONS and we get our data from the ONS. We just do things to it that the ONS doesn't do, but it's still the same data. Yeah,
so some of you might have used NOMIS before, and NOMIS is quite similar to InFuse, though I think I'm right in saying that InFuse has a greater number of categories and category combinations. So you're potentially able to explore the data in more detail using InFuse. And what you can do as well, the exercise that we gave you today was relatively straightforward, and you saw when you went into household composition, there was an option there to look at households over 65 or those under. You might not be interested in 65 as a cutoff for age, so that would involve bringing in data about age, and you can have all the different age brackets. What you can do is bring in different, download several different sets of data and then align them by the ward or whatever it is the geographical component that you've downloaded. So you can add all the different columns into your Excel sheet or whatever other analysis software you're using, and you can create your own table or your own set of data in that way. So what we've showed you today is really just sort of the start of what you can do with the data. But there's lots of other ways that you can use it. And I think personally it's quite powerful to find this local area data to put the context on the work that you're doing. And the reason why we wanted to start with census data for this workshop series is because talking to people in the third sector, and I used to work in the third sector myself. I know I worked in Manchester, and you know, you're interested in your area, and lots of people want to know what the demographics and what the challenges are in their area. And lots of the other social survey data that we're going to start exploring or look at in the next couple of weeks, it's not as easy to drill down to such small geographical areas. Lots of the data is more about wider government office regions, so it might be splitting England into 9, I think it is. So you can't really get the preciseness when you're looking at local areas, which is where the strength of the census data really comes in, because it's a full data set of the whole population. You can look at small areas, and that's sort of the richness of it. Can I analyse over time and download a few years at once? Did we answer that question? Can you compare the 2011 and 2001 data?
Yes, you can. However, you have to understand that questions might have altered, the outputs might have altered slightly, and the geography might also have altered. But apart from that, yes. So as long as you're aware of that and you make that clear when you're presenting your findings.
There's a question there as well about bulk data, Dave. Is there an obvious way of categorisation of levels within geographical regions, e.g. wards being part of cities, cities part of counties, when accessing bulk data sets?
The Office for National Statistics has lookup tables on all their geographies. So look up Census Geography ONS, and that'll get you a start. And anything else, just drop us a line and we'll help you.
And there's another one here right at the bottom. Do you see it? A little confused as to why there is a need to create areas that are not real, like the LSOA and MSOA, particularly since you mentioned natural boundaries that exist. Can you give us a brief explanation?
I think it was an attempt to create a geography that is more stable over time. Wards and local authorities and postcodes all change. Counties have gone out of existence now. So if you try and look at, for instance, areas before 1994, in 1994 they introduced unitary authorities. And so we lost a lot of the county and district council areas.
Yeah, and I just want to, I've just got a few more slides here as well that I just wanted to show you some of the resources that we have at the UK Data Service. So as well as all the data, we have a whole repository of guides and videos and webinars and some data skills modules that might help you when you're doing some of your analysis. So I just wanted to highlight this first. So when you go to the UK Data Service website, if you click on the Use Data tab, it comes up with all the different sorts of resources that we have. And so this is some of the examples of the methods and software guides. So these are PDF guides that you can download from our website. So there's software guides. So you know, if you're interested in using R, or if you have access to SPSS or Stata, you can find out more information there about how to get on with it. Then there's information there about weighting and complex survey design. That's more to do with the survey data, but there is also guides there around the census materials. We have a YouTube channel, and that's where all the videos are. We do video guides where we demonstrate. There's a demonstration there, for example, on using InFuse, similar to what we did today. as well as all our webinars that we've had over the past. They're all stored on the YouTube channel as well. And our webinar series is ongoing. We're trying to make this particular series that we're doing, we're not calling what we're doing today a webinar. This is an online workshop. We're trying to make it a bit more interactive with the activities. So hopefully, I'm really interested to hear your feedback on that, particularly because we've got 2 more coming up. If you like the format, please tell me. If there's things you think we could improve or do better, let me know as well. Anything you'd particularly like to see in the next couple of weeks, please give me a shout. Yeah, but all our webinars and online training is ongoing. And these are the data skills modules that I mentioned. We have a data skills module specifically on aggregate data. There's another one on survey data, another one on longitudinal data. And those are just self-paced learning. They take about 3 hours to complete. And they're a mixture of videos and text and quizzes to help you learn more about those topics. And those are all available on the website as well. That's the website there. So do check out all those resources. This Use Data tab here is the one I was mentioning to access the resources. So please have a look.